Okay, so today's movie review is Fear and Desire from 1952, directed by Stanley Kubrick. And so now let me get to my thoughts on the plot. The plot, I give it a 2 out of 5. We're kind of thrown in the middle of the story here. There's not a whole lot of setup. These are soldiers in the middle of a war. They don't really say what war, it's kind of assumed World War II. They crash landed and they're just trying to trudge their way through. There isn't really a resolution either. It kind of just feels like a day in the life kind of film, which I'm not a huge fan of. And it's definitely a short film too. It's only like an hour and 2 minutes, if that. So because of that, I gave it a 2 out of 5. I wanted some characters to connect to, something to relate to, and I get it. His focus here, Kubrick's focus, seems to be on an anti-war message, which, okay, more power to you. I agree with that, but just the limitations of this production, you could tell that they had a very tight budget, and I'll get into that in other parts of the review here, but you could just tell that it wasn't quite Kubrick yet. Kubrick, however you pronounce his name. Like we would see later on in films like Paths of Glory and Full Metal Jacket, his other war films. This is definitely a beginner, amateur film. So it's pretty interesting, though, seeing it nonetheless. But that's why I gave the plot a 2 out of 5. Alright, so moving on to acting. So the acting, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was pretty good for the most part. The character of Mac, for example, he's pictured on the right there, holding the woman there. I actually thought he was the most interesting actor and character, but he gets like 5 minutes of character development. It's just not a lot, right? We don't really get to know these characters. And then other actors. So the actor for Sidney, who's pictured in the back left there, he was an insane character, like a Renfield from Dracula. That's what he kind of reminded me of. I was not expecting it at all, and it actually it was disturbing for sure, especially once he's around the girl there. I think maybe that was the point though, because he is a character gone crazy. But it was bizarre. It was very hard to watch. Now the weakest actor is actually pictured on the far left there, is the lieutenant character. I thought he was just pretty meh, and his delivery was very wooden. Same with the other guy in the back there. Funny enough, though, they both played another character, but from the other person or the other side. So I thought that was weird. But yeah, I didn't like his acting, the lieutenant there. It took me out of the film and reminded me that it is a small budget and whatnot. Because with some good actors, you can make a really small film seem a lot larger than life, and to me, he took me out of it. So that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Some of the actors were good, some of them not so good. Alright, let's move on to directing. Okay, so I gave it the directing a 2 out of 5. Now, Stanley Kubrick himself hated this film. He tried to have it destroyed, any print of it. So, it's no surprise to me as why. He just wasn't ready yet. In my opinion, you could tell he was still an amateur. He still didn't know exactly what to do filmmaking-wise. Like, he broke some grammar rules, like the 180 rule, and some of the edits were really odd and had weird pauses. Maybe to give a sense of, claustrophobia and whatnot. Not sure, but I didn't like it. And, if you're going into this expecting, like, his later work with 2001, Paths of Glory, Full Metal Jacket, what else there? The Shining, right? If you're expecting that, you're not going to get that here. It's very much a student film. That's probably the best comparison I could make. He wasn't on the level that he was later in his life. But you can still see little glimpses, like the character of Sidney reminded me a lot of Private Pile from Full Metal Jacket. So there's definitely little hints of what his later characters and career was like. But nonetheless, I gave the directing a 2 out of 5. Okay, so cinematography and special effects, I actually gave it a 3 out of 5. I thought there were some really good shot scenes, even with the clunky editing. There's the murder sequence shown here of these different soldiers. We don't actually see anything. We just see the reactions of the characters we're following, stabbing these guys shooting him, whatever it is. It's actually pretty good. You could see what he was going for and trying to do, but I think the limitations of his budget or the camera, whatever he had, it wasn't exactly perfect. You know, it kind of reminded me of what Hitchcock did later in Psycho with the murder sequence. The sequence here is actually pretty similar, but not as well edited for sure. But that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay, in regards to music, the music I give it a 1 out of 5. There isn't a lot of music, but that's not why I gave it a 1. Towards, I want to say it's near the end of the film, there's some really strange music, just randomly. Super bizarre, took me out of the film. I just did not like it at all. I almost turned off the film, I'm not gonna lie. It's like, stop that. What is this? So yeah, 1 out of 5. Never want to listen to again. Alright. Okay, so tallying that all up, that brings my score to a 2.2 out of 5, which is a 44% on Criticlist. And so let me break down my Criticlist score here. There's no graphic language. It's actually pretty tame in that regard. For violence, there's some shooting and some stabbing, like I was mentioning earlier. But we don't see any blood. We just see the aftermath, and the imagery and close-ups is actually kind of disturbing. Especially the death of the soldiers and, spoiler alert, the girl too. Pretty disturbing. Okay, for nudity, sexual content, there's a bit more here. Sydney, the character who goes crazy, he's kind of filling up the girl, and actually so does the lieutenant a little bit. He's playing with her hair. It's a little creepy, not gonna lie. It's very brief, and again, no nudity, nothing like that, but it is disturbing, and you could kind of get hints at what the characters are thinking and feeling and whatnot. Very disturbing stuff. Alright, in regards to political bias, probably more left-leaning, though I don't know what Kubrick, where Kubrick laid on things. Because at this time, in the 50s, 52, middle of a Korean War, being anti-war was, I would say, a little bit more of a liberal thing, but I could be wrong. It definitely, definitely later on with Vietnam for sure, but I'll just say a little bit slightly left. But I don't think he's trying to be a propagandist or anything. He's just kind of pointing out something. Okay, in regards to being family friendly, not at all. Although there's no explicit blood or nudity, anything like that, the imagery and what's implied is very disturbing, and I don't think a child should see. It's very creepy stuff. Okay, in regards to entertainment value, I was very weirded out by the film, I'm not gonna lie. I did not like it. I didn't like it, a lot of the characters. But I also thought some of the dialogue was acted out poorly too. And I think that was just due to the amateurishness of the film. I think it's definitely more of a student film than a Hollywood production. And so finally, would I recommend this movie? Honestly, only for fans of Kubrick, only after watching his more well-known films and then going back. I haven't seen all of his films. I don't really have any plans on seeing Eyes Wide Shut or A Clockwork Orange, for example, and I know that's a hot take, but I just don't like overtly sexual stuff, and I know, some people are like, oh, that's not the point. I get it, but I just try to avoid movies like that. But I've seen 2001, I liked that. Seen Full Metal Jacket, liked that. Dr. Strangelove, The Killing at the racetrack, I liked that one. But I still think my favorite one is Paths of Glory, his World War I film with Kirk Douglas. That was a good film. That was a much better anti-war film, in my opinion. That film, I think, is kind of a soft remake of this one, in a way. Just some of the different imagery and whatnot. But yeah, this is definitely his amateurish. I do not recommend this to people who are just trying to watch movies casually or trying to get into old movies. This is not a good representation of that. Alright, but those are my thoughts on Fear and Desire from 1952, and that concludes today's movie review.